Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, let's get to another SEC game that, bluntly, I think I'm maybe a little bit more interested in than most of maybe kind of the national audience. That is Arkansas at LSU, the battle for the Golden Boot. LSU, a 17.5-point favorite at home. This is a night game in Death Valley, but this is also a rivalry game with, again, LSU coming in as a 17.5-point favorite, the over-under set at 54.5. And what I would say is, listen, if you're a national college football fan, I get that Notre Dame, Ohio State is going on, Oregon College, there's a lot of different games going on all day long that this gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. But I do think this one has a chance to be a little bit more competitive than people think, and it's for two simple reasons. I don't think LSU is quite as good as they looked last week. I don't think Arkansas is quite as bad as they looked last week. Now, in terms of LSU, listen, we talked about it going into the game last week. I didn't think they'd have much of a problem with Mississippi State, even on the road. I didn't think they were going to do what they did to Mississippi State, though, putting up over 500 yards of total offense. 41-14 was the final score. And what really stood out, it wasn't just a good game for that offense. It was quite literally a historic game. Jaden Daniels finishes 30 of 34 passing, 361 yards. Malik Neighbors, 239 yards receiving. LSU finally got the run game going. LSU's defense played really well. And this was kind of one of those games, right, where if you liked LSU in the preseason, you liked that frontline talent, Harold Perkins made some plays, you sat back and said, oh, that was the team that I was expecting when I picked LSU to make my playoff, play for a national championship, win the SEC, whatever. Here's what I would say about that game. Listen, LSU was great, so I'm not trying to take away anything from LSU. I do think, though, that there's a very good chance that Mississippi State might be much, much, much worse than a lot of people realize. And this is something that we talked about going into last weekend is I understand the unfortunate circumstances in which Zach Arnett took the job at Mississippi State. It was obviously following the passing of Mike Leach. You want to kind of hold everything together. It was sad. It was emotional. It was unexpected, all of that. At the same time, we are into the 2023 season. And while Coach Leach is always going to be on our minds, like we do have to kind of focus on the present from a football perspective. And the football product just isn't that good. And it goes back to what I said previewing the LSU-Mississippi State game last week. And that's that I don't get why they were so quick to go away from the air raid. Well, Mississippi State did. Now here's the problem. They literally have the worst offense in the SEC right now. They are averaging like 200 yards per game less than LSU and Ole Miss at the top of the SEC. And so they went away from the air raid, I think, thinking that they were going to have a more balanced offense, defense, run game, pass game, all of that. Here's the problem, though. The defense isn't any good either. I just told you. They gave up 500 plus yards to LSU last week, second to worst defense in the SEC right now. And so I don't know if Mississippi State is good on offense. I don't know if they're good on defense. And I think LSU might have just got them at a point where most people don't realize how bad Mississippi State is. Now, from the Arkansas perspective, they lost at home to BYU. And I'm by no means making excuses for losing at home to a BYU team that, frankly, might not be very good. BYU is over a touchdown underdog on the road at Kansas this week. So that tells you what Vegas thinks about BYU. At the same time, there are a few factors there that I don't think have been talked about enough either. One, obviously, look, Arkansas is not the same team without Rocket Sanders. Star running back, he's been out. He may be back for this game. We don't know if he will be. Same time, Arkansas was able to move the ball. I think that is worth noting. And KJ Jefferson remains a really, really good college football SEC quarterback. 71% completion percentage through 3 games. He has been a bright spot, and so has the pass rush for Arkansas. 12 sacks through 3 games. That defensive line is playing really well. The other thing that happened with Arkansas last week that I think is worth noting, they just killed themselves with penalties. Finished the game against BYU with 14 total penalties for 125 yards. BYU only had 45 penalty yards, and so you end up looking at that. That's 80-plus yards that they just gave away to BYU. And so when I look at this game, I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive than maybe some of the national people think, some of the national conversation believes. Why? To beat LSU, you got to be able to do two things and two things well. You have to be able to get to Jaden Daniels. You have to be able to make him uncomfortable. Remember, this LSU offensive line, they're still moving pieces around. They're still trying to figure things out. Jaden Daniels last week in the pocket was just able to sit back there and pick apart Mississippi State's defense. It looked like a 7-on-7 event. Like it was, he not only did he go 30 for 34, he came out with a clean jersey. Like he didn't even get touched in that game. Well, as I said, Arkansas, the one thing they do very well is get after the quarterback. And then two, I'll also say this, is that you have to be able to throw the ball against LSU. We all knew coming into the season that the secondary was going to be a little bit of a weakness for LSU. It has been so far. Jordan Travis exposed it. Mississippi State decided they weren't even going to try to pass for some reason last week. And so I do believe that KJ Jefferson is a guy that can make throws and make plays against this defense. In the end, I don't know if Arkansas will have enough to win outright. It's going to be such a tough environment. SEC home opener for LSU. But I do believe that Arkansas will cover. Give me a final score, something like 31-24, 23, something like that. And LSU win and Arkansas cover. But the Arkansas cover is one of my best bets, and it'll set up a fascinating game for Arkansas next week as they travel to Jerry World to take on the Texas A&M Aggies.